Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Wanted to say, I saw that Moa Peach has been a member. Oh, Jordan University. There you go. Moa Peach, you've been a member to the Saturday Morning D&D Show for 11 months. And then BK Dan, you're like, oh yeah, 11 months and 5 days here. And I was like, what? So thank you guys. That's really cool. You guys are super. That's crazy. That's fun. That's really fun that you have those like... I made purple badges for the 6-month run, apparently. So there we go.
We didn't scare you away. You've been here 11 months and you've returned. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are a tabletop RPG show, and we're going to talk about tabletop RPG things. I
feel like we're chocked full.
We are. So I was gonna say maybe we should just hit the bullet points and kind of go through, but and my phone's blowing up because I'm sure somebody wants to talk to me. Do not disturb. There we go. So boy, we were off last week, but to do a very quick recap, there was lots of drama. Wizards of the Coast listened, and then they didn't listen, and then they listened again. And they started calling this a playtest, which I found a little offensive because I'm like, a legal document is not a playtest. Like, we shouldn't be... You should have the draft you want and get reactions and stuff. And maybe that's kind of what they did, but they wanted to call it a playtest, I think, to bring the community back together. But overwhelmingly, they got 15,000 responses on their survey, and around 90% said, or 89/90% said that you should not revoke OGL 1.0a. And the only good thing about what you did with putting some of the role mechanics in Creative Commons is you should put more in Creative Commons. And I guess this is the big, like, we have to save face with our community. I don't know what else this would be.
Well, did you fill it out, the survey?
I did.
I did too. Yeah.
I was like, really, I haven't done any of the 1D&D playtests surveys, which I guess is like bad. I should, because I'm helping mold the game. But I also am of the opinion that what I don't like, I can change. I don't necessarily think that Wizards of the Coast is going to take my design ideas in a positive way, where I'm like, hey, I think the Rangers should operate like this. Like, they're big paid game designers. They're gonna be like, oh no, podunk guy from the inland Northwest, surely he knows more about game design than I do. So I don't know, but they want feedback on like what's fun and things like that. And I was like, well, D&D in its nature is fun.
I filled that one out, and I like went through bullet point after bullet point of like all the reasons to look at why having a community that's willing to build products about your product is a benefit to you if you look at it from like a advertisement thing. So like if MCDM makes $1 million and off a Kickstarter for a 5e book, that's $1 million marketing campaign you didn't have to spend $1 million on, right?
Yeah.
So that was like free marketing for you, because he's generating the popularity for the game. He's generating popularity for the product, and your name's associated with that. And I just think that was always the thing that got missed with the group, was just that don't look at it as money not in your pocket. Look at it as a marketing campaign that's just continually going. All these people are building products for your game. That's free advertisement. That's real value. And I just wanted to make sure to emphasize there's value in letting your community build products for you. It just helps the whole as a whole. Like, and every single positive thing I could think of.
Yeah. And I don't think 5th edition would be nearly as popular if it wasn't for the open game license and allowing all of these people to make compatible stuff and things like that, to the point where I think other companies were just like, oh my gosh, like, this is really... Like, not just Matt Colville. He was like, well, we're going to make it for 5th edition.
Paizo did a 5e
But, you know, Paizo's been making 5e content.
Monty
and
Cook.
Not just Kobold Press, but like Monty Cook. Like, they don't... Why would they invest resources into 5e if it wasn't what everybody was kind of playing? And not a lot of people, but I made a comment on YouTube that I'm like, they're coming out with responses faster than I can make videos. And I had made... So to date, I have made 3 video scripts that I want to be very clear and concise, because it's the internet. I don't like putting stuff out there where people are like gonna jump on me or say, oh, you're wrong because you didn't research this enough. And that's just my personality, is to kind of like research, I guess. And I don't, not necessarily fact check, but then give my opinion. And I had this whole video where I'm like, I think they really want to, Wizards of the Coast wants to thwart virtual tabletops. I think they want to be the only virtual tabletop. And my opinion was that they bought D&D Beyond not necessarily to acquire it, but to own it and potentially destroy it or change it if need be for whatever virtual tabletop they're working on. Because they knew that D&D Beyond was their biggest competition, because so many people use D&D Beyond. So they acquired it, and it just made sense, you know? And then I think a lot of other VTTs were like, but you know, if you start pulling not only our content or third party, your D&D content, but third party content, like, what are we going to do? This changes everything, though, because now they've officially said that it was in Creative Commons. So then my mind is saying, I'm glad I didn't release that video, because clearly if they're willing to do this, they're willing to keep other virtual tabletop competition alive, because now anyone can take the community Creative Commons SRD and incorporate it into their VTT for 5e. For 6th edition and beyond, we don't know. But that's also, like, that's a new product. That's kind of, Wizards can do whatever they want with it. And then that was my opinion from the very beginning, is I didn't want them to stop 5e 3rd edition SRD stuff. Like, you know, at this point, I'm like, release a 4th edition OGL and let us make cool 4th edition things. That would be awesome. But who knows? Anyway, so the big news is that they released the SRD into Creative Commons, and it's done. Like, a lot of people are like, well, when are they going to do that? And I'm like, just the act of putting the license on it and publishing it to the internet, which is what they did, it's now part of that. So, and they're going to keep the OGL 1.0a intact, which a lot of people were like, they're not adding that irrevocable word, but it's also the same license we've been using this entire time. So there's that. Who knows if people are going to trust it or not. I think a lot of people will probably not use the OGL in their books anymore, especially when you could just do a smaller Creative Commons, like, thanks Wizards at the bottom. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
A lot of people,
this
really
is huge.
A lot of people went back and looked at, did we even really need the OGL for the stuff we were creating? If we're creating brand new stuff wholesale, did we even need to have it in the first place? I mean, we saw, video after video analyzing, is it even needed? Did you have to have it in yours? Or were you just covering bases, which is great. You want to do that if you're just covering bases, but I don't know if Paizo really needed it or has to own up to it.
I don't think they did.
I think it's great. It doesn't matter now, but
And I think that's the reason Wizards did it, because I was waiting for them to, I'm like, just rip off the Band-Aid, release this really bad open game license that's going to force a bunch of legal battles, and then we'll let the courts decide and it'll be fine. Like, I want to get this done now rather than drawing it out for years by, like, revision after revision. Sense. And I'm like, just release the bad ones so we can sue you. And they went the opposite route, where they were like, originally the OGL was kind of a promise of just, Wizards won't sue you. Like, we want you to help this game survive. Or not survive, but, like, we want to help this game flourish. And the only way it'll flourish is if a lot of people can write a lot of things for it, and then the good stuff kind of bubbles up to the top. Whether that's,
and there's a history about that, because when they're with TSR went after a lot of people back in the day, trying to lock their stuff down. And there was this big fear, if you used anything Dungeons and Dragons, they would come out. They were known for coming after people. So it was a breath of fresh air when they're no longer with TSR. They're with Wizards of the Coast. Now this open license happens. That's like a whole different phase. And it comes from that fear of a company that's trying to just ratchet down on. So they knew the lesson. Like, the lesson happened in the 80s and 90s. They got away from it. And then it was like they just hadn't learned that lesson. But it's also, new people, we always lump in. We say Wizards of the Coast and we say this and that. But really it's like, people or certain people in parts of that company, not necessarily the whole company. It was clear there were plenty of Wizards of the Coast employees that hated this idea and were trying to tell everybody, stop doing what you're doing. This is not right. I'm sure Chris Perkins and then we're all like, hey, what are you doing? Even with Jerry Holkins coming in, a huge partner for them was like, what are you doing? This is dumb. We work with you. We helped you build the brand back in the day. This isn't how you do that. And so it's just like we've always said, those corporate sales, shareholder focused people tried to do something and it was terrible. It was not a good idea. And
that's management. Like the people that made the decisions of the OGL back in the day, they're not the same people in charge now. So they're just like, why are we doing this? But it's like they weren't there to understand, why did we do this? We did this because we wanted, there's a reason Dungeons and Dragons is the most popular role-playing game. And I think that's because of the OGL and the ability for lots of people to make lots of stuff for that system. Not just, 3rd edition, 5th edition, but like when 4th edition wasn't in the OGL, it was like people were like, this just doesn't feel like D&D. Like there's an intrinsic D&D feel to it that was expressed with the open game license. And so, I don't know. I'm blown away. This is very, very interesting. I'm curious about, just the future and stuff. I don't know. So I don't know. My mind's still
it's bright, right? Yeah. Because what does it create? It creates a huge controversy that then they do a survey, they listen to the survey at this point, and it's rolled it back. So we're back to normal at this point. And today.
Normal plus.
But then what it generated from that? It generated all the other tabletop role-playing companies announcing their SRDs or their OpenGL licenses or them joining together to create like every single one of them fell in line. I can't think of a single one. Like we have it in our notes here. I saw Modifius talked about theirs. Paizo's jumping in with the Black Flag, Cobalt Presses with them in the Orc one, and I saw Free League has theirs. I saw it was Monty Cook has been talking about there. It was like everybody's online now, so it's like our whole community has come together and decided how we want this to kind of move forward and what we as a community think is good. That's crazy to think about where we're at now with all of these games that you can make content for. Me and you could right now put up a Kickstarter campaign that's going to be about a Free League game and have an OGL or an SRD to lean on to do that and work with them. Or, a Modifius game or Powered by the Apocalypse jumped into it. It was like all these games.
Well, and another cool thing about this too is like people kind of start drifting towards systems they like. And let's say let's say we turn that cliff thing into an adventure, the cliff adventure we always talk about. Now, like I can make it for 5e, I can make it for Cypher System, I can make it for this, and there's not a whole bunch I have to change, but like what a great marketing thing for a Kickstarter now, where it's like I have this really cool adventure and we're going to make it available for these 3 systems. And it's like, I've never really wanted to play 5e, but like now I'll pick it up for Cypher System because I love that, or something like that. Like that's cool. I think that's really awesome. And then because it's a Kickstarter, you know exactly how many books of what version you need to print. And like, I don't know. I think that's really cool. And Monty Cook's already been doing this. They're like, here's Tolus for Cypher. Here's Tolus for 5e. Yeah. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I was really crazed or hyped up, I'm kind of jumping the gun, but the Apocalypse World SRD, because Apocalypse World is free. It is out there already. It's not a system reference, or it's not a OGL free. It's just free.
Yeah, I think all you have to do is credit the creator in your thing, and that's like the only thing they have. But there's nothing
much like a Creative Commons where you're like, But they're going to make a system reference document for Apocalypse World, which is what I say, Apocalypse World, I mean Powered by the Apocalypse. So Monster of the Week, Blades in the Dark, a lot of those games that are kind of hacks of it. But they want to create an SRD, but they said in that article you posted that it's really going to be, here's how you make a game. Here are like base mechanics. And then go ahead and take this and make games. And I was like, man, you thought we were in the tabletop RPG renaissance before. Like this is going to blow up everything because now it's just available, So
It's crazy. And even from a player perspective, like a lot of that is like, what games you're going to play and what did the players get out of this? I mean, players are right now, they jumped out of the rut of, I think, there's only one game to play when you want to play a role-playing game, right? There's Dungeons and Dragons. Now it's like there's so many people exploring other games right now. There's so many people buying other materials and trying them out. And Monty Cook was sold out, and Paizo was sold out, and
did you know how fast Paizo sold out? Paizo had 8 months worth of books in their warehouse when this started, and they sold through 8 months worth of books in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like their website and Amazon and stuff, it's all just like, we're doing another reprint, guys. Hang tight. Like we'll get those orders filled. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So it's like a full bonanza for all their competitors. It's a great victory for the players and then those who are thinking about creating stuff and the Kickstarter campaigns that are going to be coming in and stuff. But it also, I think, triggered we're not tied to just doing 5e, which I always thought we used to talk about too. Everybody wanted to do a 5e Kickstarter campaign. And I hope this means everybody wants to do a TTRPG Kickstarter, but it could be 5e. It could be Pathfinder 2. It could be 2D20 system. It could be Powered by the Apocalypse. It could be, I'd like to see more variety of these games and not just, hey, we need to do a 5e game because that's what money. Everybody does.
Yeah. And I think case in point, we'll see next month because February is Zine Quest on Kickstarter, and there's going to be a lot of indie RPGs that are going to go up on Zine Quest, and I guess we'll look at the numbers and we'll see, like, are these like I'm not anticipating $1 million Zine Quests, but like whenever they do really popular, it's a sign of the times that people are looking for alternate fun little systems here and there. Which I've been, I when I first started D&D, like I was very much like, well, I play D&D, and I think it's the natural evolution of a lot of tabletop RPGers that you're just like, oh, that's an interesting mechanic, like I want to try that, and now you're me with like a huge collection behind you of all these other RPGs that you play here and there. So, but speaking of that too, we have the orc system is gearing up for a playtest, and I think they are going to playtest at Gen Con. Is that what I saw?
I signed up to run games at Gen Con. The Black Flag Project is the way they talk about it on the Kobold Press page.
Oh, no, Project Black Flag is Kobold Press's game. The Orc is not Project Black Flag.
I thought they're using the same one.
No. Project Black Flag is from Kobold Press. That's them making their own game. Which our friend Celeste Konowich is the game lead on that, so I'm very excited for that. She's awesome.
I thought they're using the orc system to
the Paizo said, we want to do an orc system that's open, and then all these other game companies are like, we'll help you with that, we'll help you build that, so that we have this commonality for game design is kind of, I think, the idea of it. So Black Flag might borrow stuff from Orc, I'm not really sure. I know that Project Black Flag felt a response to this, so I'm curious the direction that's going to go. MCDM's game looks like they were always planning on a game. They're just moving the timeline up because of current events. But I am excited that maybe at Gen Con this year, speaking of which, Gen Con tickets go on sale tomorrow. So if you want to go to Gen Con, pick them up. But to be able to play some of these at Gen Con is going to be really exciting. Like,
that's going to be my year. That's what I'm planning this year around. Like, I'm going to volunteer this year to play games. And usually when you do that with these companies, they pay your way in. If you do, sometimes with certain deals, they pay your room and board there too while you're there. So, just depending on what games you're playing with, what relationship you have with the company. I've ran over the years, the Monty Cook, I worked with their team in running games, and they gave, they paid for my badge and got me in and gave me all this cool material to run Numenera and the Strange and Cypher system. I also ran for Magpie Games, and I got a bunch of cool stuff for Mass and New Generation. They paid for my way in and all that stuff. So like that's this year, I want to go and explore all these new games that people are creating and run games for other people to see what they think too, and get that interaction with people to play with it. So I'm super excited. That's what I'm framing my whole schedule around, are these, trying to jump into these play tests and jump into these, these new games that are coming.
Arc Thunder was telling us in chat here that Orc is a license, not a game. And I think we knew that Orc is a license, but I from my understanding, there's like a base reference document so that we know what we're referencing with this orc license, much like the OGL had the system reference document. So,
and it's all changing
but I could be
as
wrong.
new announcements come out and things are happening, and we're only getting glimpses of it. So I know we'll get more and more information about, what it is when we get the playtest. I hope we get the playtest. I assume they'll make it public to everybody. There's no reason not to, and then we'll jump on it because we jump on everything. Here and take a look
also,
at it.
not in our notes, but the Merry Mushmen, which are a French tabletop group publisher, they make those knock magazines. Do you remember those? Like it's knock with an exclamation point. Well, they made a free game. You can go to their website, merrymushmen.com, and they made the crack game, which is I should look it up now. It's very, very funny. But they did these funny acronyms for everything. So instead of like what is a saving throw, they had like, well, a save is like shit you got to run away from and things like that. And they had all of these funny acronyms that tied back into, the word that we know, or the acronym that like strength, STR would be like serious trouble running, or I don't know, like they had all these funny things, but cool. They made a free one, and they're like, we want to just give it away, like here you go. And it's like, what? That's cool. So
lots of creativity coming out. That means I think what we're going to see in February, March, and April, a lot of people just maybe they were waiting, or maybe they hadn't had the idea, but now they were. This I was further down in our notes there too, but I was talking to AJ about the game he's creating over, and he's creating, a really cool game too. And that looks good. I'm trying to get on, I'm going to test now. I can't wait to see this. And then there was, also CJ from Don't Stop Thinking YouTube channel. He's creating a game called,
that came out of nowhere. I was like,
what?
And
I was just like, this looks so good. So we'll talk about that as we get to those pieces, but it's just like, it's amazing to me, all the stuff that's happening. There's a lot of creativity happening right here at the end of January and moving into February. That's going to be lots of stuff for dungeon masters, lots of stuff for players to get into. And I can't wait to bring it all to our, to the show. Like what got released today, this week was Arcadia number 24. Can you imagine 24 of these really cool, almost like Dragon magazine throwback article kind of compilations of stuff that you can add to your game? This one has dragon mounts and potions and explosives, a new villain organization you can move, and everything always comes with great art. Everything comes with well thought out articles on how you can add them to your game. And it's just one of the best. I love that he's revived this idea of like the Dungeon magazine or the Dragon magazine style of let's put out monthly content that players and DMs can grab and subscribe to and read and get in, ideas and, inspiration from and use. So I love that.
And Arcadia really is ending this summer. And then they're going to work on some lore and stuff, I think, for his world, which I'm excited about because I love lore. But it was weird because I'm like, I think you could still call it Arcadia. Like the magazine doesn't need to end. And especially now with Creative Commons, I think that they could still keep making it. And I hope they do because I enjoy Arcadia, but I wonder if it's a resources thing. They're like, we can't have all of these editors and writers on this if I'm having all these editors and writers on these other projects. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. So I like staying within your means, like don't promise what you can't deliver kind of a thing. And so,
and then talking about, the Black Flag. So not only could you sign up, but they did release on their website if you go over to Cobalt Press. So Cobalt Press is doing a couple of things that's been pretty cool. I thought we should talk a little bit about, but they have there's a place to sign up for the playtest. There's a place that you can sign up if you want to run games with them at Gen Con, if you're going to be there. And then they also started showing some of the art style that they're going with, and they post that up on their website, and you can see some of that stuff. So Brian Syme, I hope I say your name right, Brian, put out an orc and then a troll, and they look pretty cool. I like the
he does a lot of Magic the Gathering and D&D fantasy art. He's done a lot for Cobalt Press, so that's pretty cool. And then I know it's further in the notes, but Cobalt Press is also, their book is out in Kickstarter right now too. So they're Deep Magic 2. Deep Magic 2.
Volume 2.
Deep Magic, like 1 and 2. Well, is it Is it a second version? I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
This is volume 1, and then the other one says volume 2. So this one's now volume 2 is the way they listed on their site.
So yeah, they came out with these like these little articles, so you could buy like these. It was like Deep Magic 1 through 9. But they've condensed those into these tomes, and if you need like random 5e spells, they're pretty good. I always like to have resources like that to drop spells on my players where they're like, this isn't the one I memorized. Like, what do you mean? And then they're like, oh, like it's a new spell. And so some of those can be a lot of fun. Like I did that with my Zakara Al-Qadim campaign, where they just had different types of magic, and they were like, what? So I would definitely check out that Kickstarter if you're interested in that. It looks pretty cool.
Kobold Press always makes new mechanics for true name magic, arcane adversaries, and repertoire. Here's a cool thing with their Kickstarter that I thought was kind of cool too, is that the book will have 20 spells written by backers, which they then increased to 50 because it was so popular. So there's like a backing tier where he says, I want to write a spell that's going to be in this book. So that's kind of cool. And then how to design your spell update is they've got a detail that's going to come out on February 17th. So really cool. I always like the Kobold. I always think they're really high quality Kickstarter stuff that they put out. And this one looks really fun and great. So then I got an email too. I got from Modifius created their D220 Builders program, which is for their games because their system's built on the D220 system. Did you play too many of those? I ran the Star Trek game adventures. I played in a Conan game that used that system. I'm in a play test for an aforementioned game that I'm not allowed to talk about because of I probably should stop talking. That's a 2D20 system. Have you played any of their systems?
I haven't. I own Star Trek, and I actually watched the Star Trek. Like Amy, I forget her last name, was on it.
Yeah.
And they ran
Dalen?
No, maybe. Anyway, she's been doing stuff for D&D Beyond lately, but I watched their Star Trek show where they, like, the DM was there and he had his, like, recurring cast. They all dressed up in Star Trek stuff, and they ran that Modifius system. So I'm familiar with it in that aspect, but I haven't actually played the 2D20 system yet. But it's like low is good, right? Like the one is replaced by a symbol on the dice, if I remember.
I should run you through that Star Trek adventure. Just one adventure, just the one little thing. It was like Star Trek cadets who had just graduated, and there's a little adventure to take you through, and it was meant to teach how the game plays. Yeah. So it's a great introductory. I should take you through that because we had fun with the team that we got together to play that. They had a lot of fun trying it out, and I think you'd like the system. I think you'd find it very interesting.
Yeah. I love learning new systems. It's fun.
And freely, like if you want to do Aliens or Tales from the Loop, which we love quite a bit, they announced their year zero engine OGO and kind of like their SRD and their Kickstarter that I did jump onto, Dragonbane. They've included Dragonbane, their newest product, into allowing people into that agreement too. So you can great stuff for that.
So Dragonbane
I didn't
is
know if
interesting
anybody else did Dragonbane
because I think it was the #1 RPG back in the day in Scandinavia, like Sweden and Norway and stuff. And this is like a revised, updated version of it. But yeah, it's really cool. And their year zero engine is the kind of like pool of D6s that you are trying to get a 6 on, and a 6 is a success. Tales from the Loop uses it. The Alien RPG uses it, from what I understand. But with this SRD, you can't necessarily make an Alien game. Because Alien is like
that's licensed
to them to make a game for Aliens, but you could make a game using those settings, and then I could buy Alien to play that hypothetical Alien game that I have. But yeah, I love Tales from the Loop. It's a lot of fun. Forbidden Lands uses that system, and I really like it. And Vaesen, which is a really fun game that I've only played a couple times, but I really loved Vaesen as well. That was a kind of a old English fairy folklore.
They put a bunch of content you can use for their Cthulhu game that they have, because they have a very popular version of a Cthulhu game in there too. And they have a lot of artwork that you can use and pull in there. So they did provide some stuff for some of not all of them. Obviously, I would think the movie franchise ones, they're not going to provide stuff. So you're not going to, like you said, you're not going to get Aliens.
Yeah.
You probably won't get Star Trek stuff because that's still owned by them. But the games that they've created wholesale, I could see that being in there. I mean, they have Homeworld. That was the other one I've been reading and been doing.
Is that 2D20 or is that Year Zero engine? I forget.
Actun Cthulhu 2D20.
Okay, what about Homeworld?
Game. Oh, yeah. So Free League has the other Cthulhu game.
I get confused about Modiphius and Free League because Modiphius
they're different.
Sells a bunch of Free League stuff for them in the United States. So cool. Yeah. I had a question for you though, and this is kind of, I think the answer will change as of yesterday. But I was thinking about this and I put it on, I'm on, what is it, Mastodon now, which is the Twitter alternative that a bunch of people jumped over there. But I'm finding really good discussions on there. So I'm actually hanging out on Mastodon more than I'm hanging out on Twitter lately. But I was asking some people, do you think that this was before D&D was in Creative Commons, but I was like, do you think that if this OGL doesn't work out, will we have a space similar to the OSR where you have like hundreds of different systems that all kind of do the same thing, but like all try to say, I'm different because of this. And it's like, well, are you? Because I could just take this mechanic and apply it to whatever game I'm actually playing in. Which is one of the reasons I think D&D was so good, is because we had like, here's the base system. And then other people could be like, Matt Colville could make like warfare rules or keep rules or something. And it's like, oh, I'll add that supplement to my existing game. Where the OSR went in this direction of like, well, I'm going to build my own game. And that's not necessarily bad, but it's very fractured. And so with all of these SRDs coming out and open licenses and stuff, do you fear that the tabletop world will splinter and fracture into different groups? Or do you think this is going to make a more cohesive thing?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know if it too much has changed really, because I think there's the group of people who are going to make the game they want based on that. Like, you are still exploring game mechanics and dice mechanics and ways to build a game. Nothing that's happened in the last 2 months has stopped you from doing it. In fact, it's just driven you forward really. And I think there's that group of people that are out there. Then I think there's the other group who says, I like this game. I love 5e. I like the mechanics of it, but I just want to apply it to a different setting or campaign world with some addition to make it feel like, hey, I'm going to do Blade Runner in 5e, or I'm going to combine two things that I love a lot: my knowledge of 5e rules and this thing. And then there's the other groups, like the OSR groups, where like I think what you're saying is like they like the old style game, but then they change certain core mechanics of it to give it their flavor of that, versus I'm just building a campaign world or I'm just adding on pieces. I feel like there's just, everybody still is going to do the thing they're interested in, and now they aren't going to feel constrained. They're never going to, I don't think anymore, feel like I have to do this because I don't have another route anymore. Like, I have to do 5e because there's no other route for me to go, because we didn't know these other companies were going to let us do these things. So you couldn't just say, hey, Jordan, let's do a Kickstarter and we're going to do this cool Cliff campaign world, but let's do it in Monty Cook's world. 4 months ago, we might not have even thought about doing a Cypher system one, because we didn't know they had an OGL or a SRD or a Creative Commons license that would let us do that. So we might have only looked at 5e to do it because we knew that one, we understood that one, and we could do it. Now it's like there's so many of them out there. We could really have that discussion of, well, which one do we want to do? Do we want to do, 2D20? Do we want to do Powered by the Apocalypse, 2D6 plus stat? Do we want to do, we could do all these, and they all allow us, if we look at their requirements, that would let us do that. So
yeah, I think I think it's a good thing. I'm not trying to say that it's bad to have a fractured community, but what I was trying to get to is like, it did feel like we all had a foundation of Dungeons and Dragons, and before it went to the Creative Commons, that foundation was shattered. And so you have people that are like, well, I'm gonna play Paizo. Well, I'm gonna play Forbidden Lands. Well, I want to try Dungeon Crawl Classics. And so we got into this point where it's like, I would argue how much of a difference is there between Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons? Like, do we, and even Dungeon Crawl Classics, do we really need to be fighting about like, like Pathfinder people being like, why don't you play Pathfinder, and D&D people, because I play D&D. Gotcha. And it's one of these things where I'm like, you guys are all kind of playing the same thing, but you're right. The DCC people really love DCC, and the Pathfinder people really love Pathfinder. And so with this fracture, I was wondering if we're going to get kind of like the OSR, where it's like, well, I don't play Knave, but I play Cairn, or I don't play this, but I play that. Or just the people that are shouting, like, look at how different and great my game is, when I'm like, really, you have the exact same game as Maze Rats, but you've added like a fun hat on top of it and published it because you can. And that's cool. Don't get me wrong. But it does make it that we have like, you're inundated with the amount of options that you can like, oh my gosh, like there's 35 games to play, when really it's like, well, if you understand D&D, you'll understand this, this, and this, So I don't know. But now that I think because of Creative Commons, I think we still have that foundation where people will be able to always go back to that and say, this is free and open. Here's what strength means. Here's what a D20 does. Here's a 20 is a crit, things that we all understand. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to be somebody who's new that doesn't play role-playing games yet, but in the next week or in the next month have decided, hey, I've heard about role-playing games. I wonder what that is. And they try to start researching, or they try to start deciding, well, I keep hearing people say they play something, and I want to know what that is. Like coming to it without any of the history, without any of and you're just all of a sudden your search is going to bring up hundreds and hundreds of options for you to say, oh, wow, these are all role-playing games and I can play any of them. And I wonder which one I want to play. And so it's almost like when we always talk about like when Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 bloated, right? Because it got so many options. It was so crazy. And one of the reasons they start to change editions is when it just gets to be so big, it's too much. And they kind of condense it down, get it back to basics, and they build again until they get too much. I wonder if we're at that point with tabletop role-playing games. We just have so many options now. Are we going to have like, choice paralyzation of, oh my God, which one should I play? Or how do I find the community that's attached to this one? And are these all just real small communities from now on? Or are we going to have another big monolith community that has, like some around it, but there's really this big, monolith of everybody plays Dungeons and Dragons.
I do like that I've had a lot of people interested in playing other games though, which has been kind of fun.
Yeah.
Because usually it's like, okay, we'll play 5e. And I like 5e just fine, but like when I have all of these games behind me, I want to try other stuff. And now I have people that are like, oh yeah, like I was thinking about that weird goblin game you have. Do you want to try that sometime? I'm like, yes, I do.
Finally.
So, because people are just wising up. And I wonder also if Kickstarters, we're going to get, rather than being like, I'm going to make this for 5e because A, it makes money, and B, it's what I'm familiar with. Like, I don't know, I'm going to call out my friend Steven on this, where he was like, I'm going to make a superhero version of 5e. And I was like, well, is that the best system for it? And he's like, it's the only one I know. And so that's what he was trying to do. And it's one of those things where I'm like, but the more we play other games, you might realize like, oh my gosh, I could make a really cool superhero. Like we were just talking the other day about Kids on Brooms has a magic element to it but you're still kids. And I was like, we should redo that magic system to be X-Men mutants. And we could run the coolest X-Men game using kids on bikes or kids on brooms. And it's that kind of thinking where it's like, I could make this with 5e, or I could make it like really cool. Like there might be a better system that fits for what I'm trying to deliver as an experience. So I'm excited for that too, but boy.
What would you name kids on X-Men though? Like kids
probably on, like mutant kids or
mutants,
children
kids
of the atom.
genes.
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be a great name, children of the atom. I love that. Yes, I love more superhero games. I want more. I back and buy all of them. So I love what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. So it's huge. It was a big week. It's been a big month. It's just been an exhausting month. And I'm excited for Zine Quest next month and to be able to just be excited about RPGs again. So it'll be fun. We did mention that tickets are on sale for Gen Con tomorrow if you're going to Gen Con. There is some controversy because they are not requiring masks or vaccine cards this year. So I'm going to get a ticket because I want to go, and then I'm going to feel it out like I did every year, where it's like I might have to cancel if like the COVID spikes so much or other things. So we'll see. But
yeah, and we went last year, and that was one of the things that I kind of like midway through the week, because I left 2 days early because midday through the week, it was the first thing that I had done. I didn't know if you'd went to anything else big, but since COVID had hit and being, mostly at home,
it was overwhelming,
being super careful. And all of a sudden I'm going to a convention of people. I'm walking around, we've got our masks on, we're doing a really good thing. And I'm just thinking, but I just kept thinking about, man, if I go home and then I have COVID and then my wife gets COVID and then that just causes all kinds of problems, and there's people we interact, and is this really the right thing to do? Should I even be here? And that's really what drove me to leave, even though I had a 4-day pass, to be like, all right, I've been here 2 days. I've pushed the envelope of, what's going on. Maybe I should just whatever. And I let that kind of, and so I think but I got home and I had nothing. All the precautions worked. I didn't get sick. I don't think you said you got sick by the time you got home. You went through an airport. You stayed with me in the same room. Everybody went home fine because I think we did the right things. We weren't talking too close to people. Yeah. We had our masks on when we were in different places.
But it's
so I think for me, I'm going to do that again.
There's so many aspects of Indianapolis that Gen Con can't control. And so it's one of those 6, 1, half a dozen of the other. Like, you
have to be careful.
Are the precautions good, or are they a weird Band-Aid? Because the minute everyone steps outside, they would rip off their mask and then go to a restaurant. And I was like, I don't think this is working as we're intending, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But we didn't get sick. So
I didn't get sick. So there you go. Not to say those precautions aren't good. It's just,
and I don't have a fear of wearing a mask. So if I go to Gen Con and I'm going to put a mask on, I'm not going to ever care that nobody else has one. If I really think it's helping me and it helps me enjoy it, then I'm going to wear it. I don't care what anybody says. And if I don't, I'm not going to, if I feel like I'm comfortable, if I feel like I'm safe and I don't, then I won't. But I feel like I'm going to be better prepared this year and not be so afraid, I guess. Because really about 2 days in, I was like, oh my God, is this the right thing? Should I even be? I'm in a town full of people. Who knows if they're following, who knows if they are actually vaccinated, who knows. And so this coming up year, I'm going to try to tamp down on that fear I had a little bit from last year. But I'm going to check, like you said, if there's a spike, well, I'm going to take that into consideration. I'm going to think about, what's going on.
I mean, I had tickets to go to PAX and Gen Con, and I canceled both of those trips because I was like, just doesn't feel right yet. So
yeah.
All of this game design stuff got me reinvigorated to work on modular D6, and I started working on that a little bit. And then the more I was working on that, I started thinking of another system. So now we've been working on this D12 system, which I'm not entirely sure what I want to call it yet, but I'm having a lot of fun with this D12 system that I'm working on. And if you're a patron, I threw it up on Patreon, like my initial draft, and I was actually working on it this morning, which was a lot of fun. And I think I created Roll20, because Roll20 is really good of like, you could just make what you want, and so I started making abilities and stuff, and then rolling the dice like a lot to be like, well, what's kind of not looking for the average outcome, because there's better ways to do that, but like making little mock battles against, sacks of hit points to see what would happen. And it was fun. It was kind of cool to like play around with it. So writing wise, that's what I've been doing. And like I said, I've had a lot of videos in the bank, but I have stopped putting them out. So that's something I need to start doing again. I think I don't know. We'll talk about YouTube life later, but yeah. It's been an interesting time if you're a D&D content creator. I'm playing Purple Planet, Perils on the Purple Planet, which is my DCC game, every other week. And we had a really great session last Sunday, and lots of like exploring sands and fighting worms and stuff. They ended up finding this like cryogenically frozen creature that rose up and had a cybernetic arms and a cybernetic eye. And this is why I love RPGs, because the elf was like, well, can I cast charm? And we were like looking through the rules, and I'm like, he's antagonistic to you, but I don't think there's a reason you can't cast charm. And so he did. And then it was like he got a really high roll. And so it was like he was super buddy, but you could see his true intentions behind the charm magic, where it was like, well, we're going to kill everybody eventually, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're good.
We'll get there.
So they ended up shooting him with a ray gun that destroyed all of his biological parts, but the mechanical eye and the two hands fell down. And then one of my players realized that he could put the eye in his head. So he couched out his own eye and put this cybernetic eye in. And I was like, you hear about that with like Vecna and stuff. It's like, oh, it's the hand of Vecna. I'll cut off my hand. But like this player actually was like, I'm going to do it. This seems cool. So he's got this really badass mechanical eye that gives him a bunch of benefits and a couple of bad things that he's going to discover later on. But I think, not just DCC, but just RPGs. Like, this is why I love them. So we were laughing about it and having just a great time. And then Great Modron March was last night.
I jumped in for a little bit.
Did you? Yeah. We had a lot of fun.
I was listening to Ted talking, and I always think it's always funny to me. Lex is always dressed in he's got his shirt and his tie on, and then LB is almost dressed like her character. There's a couple, and I'm trying to remember the fourth person you have. I'm forgetting her name off the top.
Rachel, LB.
They're kind of like their characters, and I think it's pretty cool. And then Ted's there doing his cool thing too, and I think he was almost like a Jedi.
Yeah, he's got Jedi robes on because it's been the running joke that his character's a Jedi. So yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty fun.
But we had like a huge lore drop. I keep wanting them to go into this demi-plane, and I've given them the key, but they won't go in. And then they're like, well, let's go to not Avernus, but Gehenna, which is one of the terrible lower planes, like the hellish planes. And so they went there. They found the dead god of the mind flayers, and all of the mind flayers that are like worshiping are just confused because their god's dead and they're not really sure what to do. And so it was a really good way to do like a huge kind of like lore dump, and they got a lot of names and a lot of information. They're still trying to figure out like, well, where do we go next? Because they almost died to a demon that they fought in Gehenna. And it's like, I kind of made the thing where I'm like, well, if you almost died to that, what hopes do you have against a creature that can kill a god? And they all kind of collectively were like, oh, well, but Jordan, it's a game. It kind of came back to that. Like, you have to allow us to somehow win, right? And I was like, I don't, for one, but also like, you guys should think about this. Like, we're in the end game. Like, we're super high level kind of stuff. So
maybe you should negotiate with it.
AJ Pickett's in in the chat. So welcome, AJ. He says Gehenna is hard hat country. So you do want to wear hard hats in Gehenna. It's a little difficult. But boy, we're having a lot of fun. And at the end of it, we were just like, whatever happens with this OGL stuff, we're going to finish this game at least because it's ours. Like, we own the game. Wizards doesn't own it. We're going to keep playing the cool story that we want to tell. So, and that's what I've been working on.
And I don't know. So I was sending just a couple messages, and AJ's project he's working on called Super Atomic. He had some really cool artwork that captured me on Twitter. I'm like, oh, what's this? And he sent me this cool. He's kind of gathering together lots of content creators to build this, and it's going to be like a game, as I understand it. And I don't want to like spoil anything for him, so I'll be a little bit vague because I'm sure he's going to do all the reveals and show everybody all the stuff and talk about it on his channel, I'm sure. But he's bringing content creators together, and you're going to be able to like learn how to play this game right from YouTube. So it's almost like the game will exist in YouTube. That's where you'll go to get your book and learn and figure it out and be able to do it. And he's like time-stamped areas, and they're going to, how the whole game will work. And I was just like, this sounds like a super cool idea. I'm in. Whatever you need help with, let me know. I'll play test. I'll whatever. You want me to back something? I'll back it. You tell me. I'm like, let's do this, because it sounded so cool. Like where he was going. He's really putting his focus and energy in to building something that he wants to create, which I think is great. And because he was definitely on Twitter too. He was out there. He was one of the first ones I was seeing about, hey, this OGL thing is not great. People shouldn't be doing this. We need to everybody needs to, kind of spread the word so it doesn't just go under the carpet kind of thing. He was one of the, him and Ted were some of the ones that I saw first in the very beginning of it. and had stayed through the whole thing, you know, and I was like, this is cool. And so when he started talking about this, I'm like, this sounds super cool. And I've already said, yeah, whatever I can do to help, you let me know and send me some stuff and I'll do it. And it's going to be really cool. And I love a superhero game, and he had some really good artwork with it. So I can't wait to see and talk more about on our show, you know, Super Atomic. And go out on Twitter and just type in AJ stuff, and he's been posting stuff there. I don't know if he's put anything up on his channel yet. I'll have to go look because I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
To see if it's there, because it looks really cool. And then right next to it was CJ from Don't Stop Thinking. So I was texting him, and he's doing Cloudbreaker Alliance, which is his game he's building. And if anybody knows his channel, like I was watching a lot of people learn how to play or learn mechanics for Dungeons and Dragons 5e from his channel. Like he was doing really cool animated things about this is how you would do this thing, and people really gravitated to that teaching style. And then he really dove into the Chinese culture portion and histories. He even did a Karatur whole series about how you can use that and bring it into your game and make it so it's right for Dungeons and Dragons. Well, he's coming back, and I'm looking at all the stuff he's putting out, and it's like, if you ever want to play a Final Fantasy style game, or you ever wanted to play any of those RPGs you played on Super Nintendo and all those other games, this system he's building looks like it's going to be just perfect for that. Like it's, you know, it's, he calls it Sun Tzu's Art of War plus anime is the way he describes this system they're building and his team that he's gathered together. And I was just like, these are so cool.
Yeah. So Cloudbreaker,
so I'm like, let me play test that. I want to be into this. Send me the rules. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was,
I didn't realize that CJ started a second channel that was all about like Chinese history in his same art style dynasties. Yeah. And so this game looks really cool because it's something he's familiar with, and he's kind of combining like mythological China with or Chinese history, I guess, with like mythological and anime tropes and stuff like that. And but I was very curious. I think that would be cool. But yes, AJ, whenever you have I'll try to find a link for it. Yeah. Let me find a link for CJ's video, and I'll put it in the chat. But if AJ, if you have a playtest coming, let us know, and we'll all jump up.
I'm so pumped. And then in the mail came Avatar. So I've been reading that. This is a Powered by the Apocalypse style game made by in conjunction with Magpie Games, one of my favorite game companies of all time, and Nickelodeon, and you know the whole Avatar. And I always think it's funny too, because you have two enormous franchises right now going with Avatar, because you have the movie that's out that's not related to this, but you also have the different different cartoons that represent this whole world, and the different books and comics and lores and stuff. So I've got that, and it came with like cool dice, D6 dice for stuff, and then like action cards, and came with a cool map of the nations, the 4 different nations, and came with an adventure book, Wan Chi Tong's Adventure Guide. So everything that we can think of to play that. And I've been reading that as this whole week's been going on. There's a lot of cool stuff. In fact, they sent me in this one, I have 2 books that are the role-playing game books. So the dungeon master can keep one with them, and then you can just hand the other book to your player. So they sent out, the 2 different books. So I have 2, 300, 400 page books that are the same. Really cool. And it's just been reading one system after another this week has been great. And then, trying to keep up with some of the D20 Dungeon 23 stuff, where I got behind this week for sure. I'm going to have to do a little bit of catch up, but I'm already thinking about, where to go for level 2, because as we get to the end of January, right, that's the end of level 1. And then you'd be moving into whatever your level 2 part of your dungeon is. Have you started thinking about your level 2 for your dungeon yet, or where are you at? Because now, as yours is, they're diving down first, and then they're going to come back up, so they must still be diving down at this point.
Yeah, they're diving down. So I finished with I got like a food storage room where the farmer was growing mushrooms and then fused with one of the mushrooms, and so the boss at the end of that one was like a giant man-eating mushroom that was kind of rooted in the ground, so you really had to like come to him, and he would lure you in. And then the last little bit I did was, I'm trying to remember now. I don't actually remember. It's all written down somewhere. But yeah, it's like plugging along. Oh, it was storage. Storage was the key. So I had a big like storage room of like, this is where they made weapons, and this is where they kept grain, and this is where this happened. And then there were a couple of traps and stuff in there. But really, this first level has been like, this was an old dwarvish settlement that got corrupted by a demon frog. And so the second level is going to be worse, basically. I'm going to keep that demon theme, but it's like the influence of that demon is huge. And so my goal is to like get down 6 months, 6 levels. And then there is kind of like the big boss is there, and then they have to climb back out because, the other direction, and then they'll be in another world is kind of the idea. So I don't have everything planned out. I'm not like you.
Oh, yeah.
I really look at the prompt on Sunday mornings and I'm like, let's do this. And so, but I am working on it. And if you go to the Jocular Junction, I'm doing weekly videos on like what I'm writing, and I take little stop motion of me drawing it out and stuff. So it's lots of fun. Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's still been a fun challenge. I feel like.
Do you know what your level 2 is then? It's the first one was elemental. Do you know what the second one is?
I don't. I'm trying to decide what that second level is. I need the theme, and I need it in the next couple of days because Tuesday is the 31st. So, and I'm already starting to think that way because I really I understand this whole level, my first level, which is the base of the tower. It's the entrances. It tells the story of the tower a little bit. And then it has some crafting areas all around that are based off of different elements, which allow you to ascend higher and hopefully encourage you to push higher.
You should look at...
But it's also an area that doesn't have like a lot of money that drops or like a lot of items. It's more like materials that drop. And as you go higher, then I think more actual stuff will drop, more like treasures and items themselves. But that first level was really just to help you build up and build or purchase things that you could start to move up for.
Yeah,
so
you should look at the planes of existence, like the Great Wheel, and you could think about that, like, oh, this is a war level, or this is this level. And I was just thinking, like, if you have a lot of forges and stuff on that first level, maybe the level 2 is a forest, like it's a weird encapsulated forest because all of the trees that grow allow for wood to come down and be used as fuel, or something like that. And then you could do like I don't know, maybe the players, if they're there too long, they turn into beasts or something from the Beastlands. That would be cool. But yeah, look at Planes of Existence.
And the idea of the full tower is the lower you are in it, the less it changes because the magic to maintain it and the magic being used there is so low that it doesn't have a lot of magic to make a lot of changes or stuff.
Yeah.
But the higher you go, the more magic the players are using allows for dimensional spaces, changing of the levels, like where the level begins to change because it has enough magic to make changes. And so it's really just this idea of that it's like a perpetual magic engine, right? So the more power that's being put into it, the more things it can try to throw at these players and to encourage them to move higher and higher. And it's all about just trying to gain that magical power out of the spells and abilities that they're using. Like everything is about siphoning that off and using it for some ulterior motive, which will be somewhere near the top. So I can't wait to get to that point. And like you said, I think there will be these extra dimensional spaces where all of a sudden floor 7, because it's high enough in the air and there's enough magic going on, it's like you're on a forest and it has a sky that you don't even think you're in a tower at that point, but you're in a dimensional space. And then you move to the next one. It could be just something totally different and unconnected. But the lower ones, I think, are going to be more structured and they don't change as much. And I was just thinking, but those are all cool ideas. And I do want to have a big forest level or a big, different element levels that are based on like an environment level, I guess is more, not maybe an element level, but more of like an environment level, I think is what it would be. So yeah, it's a million ideas come to my head as I go through it. And I'm just like, let's do this one and do that.
No, it's super fun. It's super fun.
So good.
Really enjoying Dungeon 23. It's been, we're only a month in, but like, it's been a fun creative outlet for me as well.
And there's a lot of other people doing it and posting about it or talking about it. So if you do the hashtag or you go out on
search hashtag Dungeon 23.
Yeah, Twitter, I saw some. I'm sure on Mastodon, there's probably a lot of people talking about
or just
what they're
Google.
doing.
Like, you would be amazed at how many blogs people are doing this, and they're just keeping a daily blog, and it's fun to see what they're doing. So, Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you so much for all of the people in chat hanging out and chatting with us. Really excited. We had a lot of people today. It's a weird news day, so it makes sense. We will be back next week, I believe. A demon raccoon should be the next boss. Okay, we'll work on that. I like that idea.
Raccoon.
A tanuki with spikes. I don't know, something. But yes, we'll be back next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Until then, take care, everybody, and go play some games. Woo!
Go play some.